For the last 3 years, between recording segments of the D6 generation, Russ, Craig, and Raef have had various conversations that have spanned the interests of gamerdom worldwide. This is one of those conversations.
D6G, The Lost Chapters.
Hello, welcome to Lost Chapter number 6.
Yes, welcome. You are now deep within the archives, or Dunkin' Donuts, depending on where you go.
Right. Have we all got our coffees here and ready for another...
I do. I actually have a Dunkin' Donuts iced coffee, skim milk with regular sugar.
Don't you always?
I want to spit because I wanted a soda, and all they have is Pepsi.
You know, Dunkin' Donuts, all they have is those bottles, too. Dunkin' Donuts needs fountain drinks. I'm sorry, you do.
They need fountain Coke.
They do. Coke products, exactly.
But you know what? Nobody out there spent 99 cents plus Russ's penny to hear us talk about Coke and Pepsi.
I beg to differ.
You think a couple of them did?
Yes.
Maybe. All right,
I want to hear about this Wakeland because this fascinates me.
I want to talk a little bit about, we've had a lot of requests, believe it or not. I know this
I do believe it.
But we have a lot of people asking, hey, every once in a while I'll put pictures up on the intertubes of some
Plano boxes.
Of Plano boxes and organizing a box. Or we just talk about it on the show and we'll say, yeah, I organize all my stuff. And people ask, well, what do you do to organize it and why do you organize and when do you organize a game, when don't you? So I thought it'd be kind of fun to talk about how we organize our boxes if we do. And then go beyond just box control. But also what's interesting about box control, the term, or storage, is it's not just about storage. It's also, for me, it's about getting the game to play better and play faster, to improve setup time, teardown time, and actual in-game play time. Mm-hmm. So hopefully all that's going to come together, and we'll...
Wait, I would say, as an observer from the outside who doesn't really pay that much attention to box control, that there's a third aspect of it, which is, don't you particularly enjoy, as part of your hobby experience, organizing your box, fiddling with the bits, checking out the components, blah, blah, blah?
Oh, there's definitely a little fun the first time you open it kind of thing. And I do like organizing the box.
Okay.
And I bet there's a German word for that, too.
Frottenschneisen?
No. Frottenschneisen is not the right word.
It's Schotten, not something along the lines of Schadenfreude, but not that.
Not that.
Munchausen system syndrome?
No, I'm fascinated by that, but that's not it either.
No.
Have you heard about the new one, Internet Munchausens, which I don't know what that means, but...
I think you make that up.
Yeah, I think you made that one up.
No, I didn't. I heard it.
Okay. Anyway.
Okay, moving along.
I agree with Russ. There is a certain amount of joy in opening the box, but and looking through the stuff and organizing stuff. But I think that's more of a psychological issue.
Yeah, I think really it's about making the game play better, and then certain games really need this. Like, it's usually an American game, aka Ameritrash, which is a term I don't like very much here on the show.
I hate that term.
But American games took this problem because in American games there are lots and lots of bits. But some Euro games have this problem. For example, Dungeon Lord just called out for some kind of box control.
Yes.
And so let's look at some of these games.
Agricola does too.
Now, first of all, you can sometimes you can easily tell which companies are going to require more box control than others, because some game companies do a great job of having their games prepackaged, ready to go. Mm-hmm. And I think the best guy out there for this
is a king. There is a king of the hill.
Days of Wonder is definitely the king of box control.
Yep.
Their games are fantastic. I don't think they release a game without having some kind of insert that holds everything in its little spot.
Yep.
Whether it's Shadows over Camelot or Small World with special little trays or whatever else, and it's a little modular docking tray that pops in and out. They do a great job of that, and you can almost take a Days of Wonder game out the way you bought it, play it, put it back in, and it all stores perfectly.
Now, do they give you the little Ziploc baggies too?
Well, a lot of game companies store Ziploc baggies in, but with Days of Wonder,
a lot of them do, but some don't.
With Days, you don't even need the baggies usually, because there's actually little pods in the box for the cards and for the bits.
Oh, you're right.
They get really, really, really good about that. But just about everyone else needs help. Some of the collectible card games are getting better. Not collectible, the deck building card games now have some really cool box control inside of them. But otherwise, and the other ones that need a lot of box control, we don't really talk about it in terms of box control, but miniature war games all need some kind of organizational help.
Massive amounts.
And thus, whole companies and industries have grown, like Battle Foam, around the idea that you need ways to transport your game, all the things that go with the game to play the game, all the bits and the components and the tape measures, plus all your models. So miniature war games are a huge, huge part of that. But before we get into miniature games, let's talk about board games. Now, when I go to organize my boxes, I have certain tools of the trade that I go to, my go-to stuff. In fact, I use this stuff so much that I keep extra supplies of these things on hand so that I can get a new game and not have to worry about having to go shopping for stuff. Yeah. So basically,
that's a good idea.
Plano is my friend. And
yes.
For those who don't know, Plano is a company here in, I believe it's Plano, Illinois. I believe is this town. Or is it Texas? It might be Texas. Maybe Plano, Texas. I can't remember the state. But the reason it's called Plano is because of the name of the town. And they produce fishing tackle box gear. And they have giant tackle boxes, but they also have these great, various sized little plastic clear boxes that are designed to hold all the different lures and hooks and everything. And what's great about these is they're basically a bunch of little pods inside these plastic boxes, and they're clear so you can see what's in them. And I generally stick to two types of Plano boxes. I like the 3650, which is your biggest size one, which I generally use for, for those who've heard me talk about my Descent game, where I have a box for the Overlord and all the cards and his stuff, and then a box for the heroes. That's like a 3650 there. I also use the 3650 in Battles of Westeros. I have a box for Stark and a box for Lannister, and all the bits are in there.
Exactly, yep.
But then I also like, and there's a bunch of different varieties, but I also like the 3448, which is a smaller one, a very small one, that has a lot of little chambers in it, which is great for like a bunch of little bits from like Civilization, for example. I have a couple of those in
Civilization. Bit of trivia for you, Russ. It is, in fact, Plano, Illinois.
Thank you, Illinois. I couldn't remember if it was Texas or Illinois. So those are two of the big things. You can use those two. Now, another new technology I've just gotten into.
Wait.
Yes, Raef.
Questions.
Yes.
This is going to be in such the minutia that if we weren't charging for this, people would puke. Russ, do these, because I don't do this level of box control, so I am ignorant in this. Are these the Plano boxes that have the slats already in them, or do you have to put the slats in?
Depends on the one. The 3448s are pre-quadrant. They're like the bigger one, the 3650. You can pick where the slats go.
And how the hell do you figure that out? Literally.
Well, that's what I like about a 3650 is you can decide. So if you have lots of decks of cards, you can make the spaces bigger.
Because you know how I get all confused and we'll spend hours, and you guys make fun of me trying to do when it used to be the pluck and pick.
Yeah.
You know, and I'd be like, oh, do I orient it this way?
Well, this is a big question because some people out there are thinking, Wakeland, why are you spending all this money on plastic? Just throw all the stuff in baggies. It's easier to get going with. Well, the reason I like the Plano is, in addition to storing it all in the box, you can just pop the lid open, everything's pre-sorted, and you can play right out of the Plano with your game because there's chambers for everything. So all those little heart tokens are on one spot, all the little coin tokens are on the other spot. If you want to get really fancy, you get a different denomination of your coins from Merchant and Marauders spread out throughout the box. So you don't have to worry about trying to hunt through a big pile of stuff during the game, and that actually speeds gameplay. It also speeds up cleanup time because as you play, if you put the extra bits that go back into the bank, into the boxes, into the plastic Plano, you're ready to rock. So when I'm thinking about how to partition these things out, I'm thinking about actually not the optimal way to store it in the box. A lot of times my chambers are only half filled. I'm trying to think about the optimum way that a player can use this and not have to go unpacking anything. Right? So I really spread it out that way.
But what would be the counter argument to me, the way I do it? So I just put all my hearts in a little Ziploc bag. I go buy a little sandwich-sized Ziploc bag.
You can do that, but then you'll find that during the game, that reaching into the sandwich... Oop, there's a dog up there. The dog and dunks must be a seeing eye dog.
Oh, geez, it must be a seeing eye dog.
So there's if it's a plastic bag, you'll find reaching in and out of plastic baggies during gameplay troublesome. So generally what you do is you dump them out, right? And then you got to put them all back in at the end.
That's true.
But again, then it takes up more table space. So now you've got to dump out your baggie of hearts, you got to dump out your baggie of coins, you got to dump out, and it's taking up more and more space in the table, and they're rolling all over the place. But with a Plano box, you just pop it open. Everything's ready to play right out of the box. And as you play, you put them back. And at the end of the game, you just got to put back what's in each player's pile. And you're done. Close it up. Game's put back away.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think that's what I like about the Plano is it's not just about storage. It's also about speeding up gameplay.
No, but I've
another reason that 3650 is good is because most of those Plano boxes don't have a space big enough for cards.
Right.
And the Plano 3650 has almost 25% of it that can be partitioned off as one single large space. So it's ideal, especially for Battles of Westeros, where you can put the large, the house token and the card decks and all those bigger pieces can all go in there. So it really is ideal because that's the thing that I run into the most often with Plano is that you've got all the space in the world for those little pieces,
right?
But you're not going to have any space for the larger tokens and things like that. And
so are you saying you do put your cards in? You make a slot for the cards?
For the Battles of Westeros, I totally do. Yeah.
Yeah. If the cards are like here's a great example of 3650s really being used. When I got for my StarCraft game. Each player, and there's 6 players, has their own color with a bunch of bits. They have their own deck of cards. They have a bunch of tokens that belong to them, a bunch. So what I did was, in my StarCraft box, which is huge, it's one of the coffin boxes, I have 6 3650s in there. Each one is customized for a single player. So all of his bits are sorted out in there. His decks of cards are in the side. So I can just, when you're getting ready to play this game, I just hand you a Plano. You pop it open. You're supposed to organize. You don't have to dump out a big bag and organize all your ships and get everything worked out. It's all in one box, and he's ready to play. And I think that's a real big gaming aid. And also, people excited. They're like, "Oh, I have my own little bank. I have my own little." And Craig's example, cool. Westeros works the same way. You give one player one Plano, the other player takes the other Plano, and they're ready to go. They got their whole little layer.
Don't you find, though, like I see so many times people are digging their finger in and they can't get the bits out, and they're digging their finger in and they can't get the bits out?
Well, you got to pick. I think you got to pick which Plano box you use for what. I think if you don't overfill them, you're fine.
Because you can't. They're not all individually cupped, so it's a pain. You can't tip the whole thing over or everything.
Well, the Planos actually. Here's a little more detail. Front to back, the Planos are curved in the bottom corners.
Yeah.
So if you're not using pieces that exactly fill up the square, you can pull front to back and they'll slide right up the wall of the Plano.
Okay.
But if you try to go from the side, they won't because they're corners. So a little tip there. Now the problem the Planos have, though, is one of their weaknesses is, what if you have a ton of a single type of bit? And a great example of this is Merchant and Marauders with huge amounts of coins, or Dungeon Lords, where there's a huge amount of little plastic minions and there's a huge amount of wooden coins. And where do you put all these things? Well, I've decided that what I've started to find is I like the Glad mini rounds. What are these things? Well, recently, guys that like Glad who make, the Glad trash bag guys, plastics, like Road Maiden type stuff. Well, Glad makes these, they call them mini rounds. They're little tiny food storage dishes.
What's the diameter?
They're about maybe 3 inches across in the top.
Okay.
And maybe 3 inches deep.
Yep, I know exactly what you're talking about.
They have little plastic lids. Now, they're designed to be disposable, so they're very cheap. It's like
very thin.
It's like $3 for 6 of these things, or 8 of them. So they're very cheap, and you can fill a game box with these. So I did this with Dungeon Lords, and it works great because all my minions fit. And then what's great about these, you just pop the top off, and you have a little jar essentially filled to bits, ready to go.
Okay, and so again, your theory is that that's better than a Ziploc bag because you can it stands up, you can reach in.
You don't have to dump it out, right? It's like a bowl of miniatures.
Yeah, I would agree with you there.
And then you just chop the top back on, and you're done at the end of the game. So it's almost like the game just sort of unloads itself, ready to play, if you will.
Well, you might have just sold me on those. Okay,
yeah, those are cool. Now, so that's my 2 major tools.
Craig, you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Wasn't sure if you had dog issues. Craig, what's the one that you do where I've seen you flip it over? It's double-sided.
I don't know.
The quilting box?
No, there's I don't even know who it's made by. It may be by Plano, but if you go to the same places at stores where you can find Plano, they usually have a couple different companies, and most of these actually Plano does have one. I don't know what the number is, but it's a small box that has 6 compartments on either side, and they're relatively shallow. So they're ideal for the small tokens, basically. And I used one in Battles of Westeros also. Basically what it does is that's where my campaign tokens and things like that are.
Right.
Yeah.
So things that you're not going to need all the time, but that you can get to quickly if you need them for setup.
Okay.
And the one that I have, again, I have had no luck finding the name of it, but there's one that I got at Michael's that actually is a very large briefcase-like plastic box with a million little tiny plastic, like the size of a quarter, plastic boxes inside it, and that's what I use for my most of my Descent stuff.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we didn't mention where to get this stuff either. So Plano, for example, is usually found any place they have fishing supplies, and a great place for that is Walmart. Good and cheap. Surprisingly, Target doesn't carry very much Plano, so Walmart or any major fishing, if you have a local fishing store near you or outdoors sportsmanship place, you'll have Plano there too.
Yeah.
Now, some other tools of the trade, so that's all the boxes. But you still can't really escape some basic stuff that I've been using for years, which is rubber bands, Ziploc sandwich bags, and then my newest technology is amazing tape.
Yeah, would you recommend that?
Well, let me start with rubber bands first. So, rubber bands. Now, hardcore board game collectors will shriek in terror at the mention of the word rubber band, because generally,
that's because their fingers are so delicate.
Well, I don't think it's that. I think the rubber bands are usually used for cards, and storing cards in rubber bands is bad. And the reason it's bad is twofold. First of all, it will bend the cards. It'll pull on them a little bit. And also, the cards will not lie flat in the box because there's a little bump of rubber band on there. So theoretically, the cards will slowly warp in time, and the rubber band's putting pressure on the cards. And also, rubber bands over time, if you don't play a game very often, rubber bands will deteriorate and sometimes leave a little residue in the card and all that kind of stuff. So that's the first issue is with that. Now, so what's been invented to replace rubber bands is a lot of different things you can use. Obviously, tuck boxes some people use, but I like this new stuff called amazing tape. Hugo's amazing tape.
Yeah.
And if you Google it, you'll find it. A lot of stores carry it. Your local store can order it. And it's basically, that material you can stick on your window at Christmas time, looks like a snowflake, and it sticks on the window. It's kind of like that kind of stuff. It's not really sticky, but it's this roll of tape that will stick to itself. But it doesn't permanently stick to itself, so it unsticks. So you cut a length of this stuff off, and it comes in a bunch of different colors. You wrap it around your deck of cards, and now it's a perfectly flat thing. It doesn't put any stress on the cards because it doesn't try to shrink like a rubber band does.
So you recommend it?
I like it
because I just use rubber bands now.
It is pricey. It's
that's the thing. Yeah, I love it. I bought it again for Westeros, and I love it. But the price was enough to choke my German Shepherd.
Yeah. Now it's also great though. I love it for now. I've had one roll. It's like $15 a roll, but I've had this roll now for like 2 years. Because I'm very careful about how I use it, but I use it for holding like all the tiles in Wrath of Shadowrun or Ravenloft.
We're off again.
And any of those kind of things, because it holds them together great and doesn't put pressure on the tile and make little rubber band dents in the corners.
Right.
Now, but when you unwind it, it looks like to me it would unwind like cellophane into a big ball of goo.
Nope.
No, it really doesn't.
It doesn't?
It really doesn't.
Okay.
Yeah. And if it gets dirty, you just wash it off and it still works. It's just like that stuff you stick to your windows at the holidays.
Okay.
So I like the amazing tape. It is a little pricey, but it's worth it if you're a hardcore box control fanatic like
you two geeks are.
And the last choice, I still use Ziploc sandwich bags because they have. I like the ones with the little plastic zippers on top. I've seen these things because they're easy to open and close. And I usually use those for games that have large numbers of plastic bits, like Descent, where you're not really going to get all those parts into a plano, so you throw them into a baggie. And I sort them out by size, so I'll have like a bag of large monsters and a bag of medium monsters. So I'll use them that kind of thing in those situations.
Wait. Why would they not go into a plano box?
Oh, they're way too big. They're way too big. The Descent models are just
too big.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah, but it depends. I have all of my Descent models, and I mean the monsters, not the characters, but I have all of them in one relatively compact. Again, it's about the size of a briefcase toolbox, or actually, it's a box for screws and nails and things like that I got at Lowe's. So then that costs about $20, so it's not cheap, but so I have all my monsters, but then again, my monsters are painted, so I didn't want to just throw them in a baggie. But the thing that I think is most because whenever I hear Russ talk about baggies, I think, oh, geez, why would anybody use baggies? Then you're digging through it. But the way Russ uses them, he's kind of selling himself short, is that when he divides up his things, if they're not divided up by Plano boxes, the bag has everything you need for that one faction in it.
Right.
So there's actually other storage devices inside the bag quite often.
Right. It's
so
storage
it's got all the
within storage.
pieces, then the tokens for that. So it's kind of like you can throw a baggie at someone and they've got everything they need to play the elves, or everything they need to play chaos, or whatever.
Right.
Everything they need to play Skaven. Anybody?
I know. How exciting is that? So that's a good segue, Raef, Craig, though, into sometimes the reason I will resort to baggies, even though you're absolutely right, it's sometimes nicer to go out to a hardware store and get a medium-sized toolbox or something to throw all your stuff in. Is step one for box control. The first question you have to ask yourself is, do I want to keep this in the original box? If the answer is yes, and I'm this way, I have this mental block where I really want my game to get back into its original box because it's got, especially if it's a Fantasy Flight game, because it's that nice linen box, it's got cool artwork on it, and I really want it back in there. That's going to limit what you can use, right? Because if you've got it to a toolbox, which would probably be the best way to store some of these things, you're not going to have the pretty box art. Right. So you got to kind of decide if you're going to want to do that or not. The other thing you want to consider is almost always you have to lose the inserts. when you first look at a game like Westeros or whatever, there's always a little cardboard insert from Fantasy Flight that's got a little artwork on it as well. And it's really reducing the amount of stuff in the box because the box is mostly air. Yep. The thing you want to do is yank that out and throw it away, because as soon as you do that, you'll suddenly realize you have tons of space in your box and all the parts are flopping all around. And that's where that space is going to fill up with plano or whatever you're going to use to organize your stuff. So, and the next thing I do is I only look at plano sizes that fit into the box I'm looking at. So,
which those two sizes you gave us will fit, right?
Those two sizes will fit into either obviously in the coffin boxes, but more importantly, they'll fit into the smaller size Fantasy Flight boxes like Civilization or Chaos in the Old World, right? The square ones they do, It'll fit into those, and it'll fit into Small World and a lot of the square boxes. Now, not every game manufacturer's box sizes are the same, but typically there's sort of a standard square box size and then the massive box size, and usually okay on both of those with plano. Once in a while you're not, though. Like I think Dungeon Lords has trouble with plano, and I had to work around with that's why I started playing with the the mini rounds, and I actually found I liked those for certain situations.
Yeah.
And then, though, if you're going to go the Craig route, if you've decided,
because I have the same thing you have, where I really want to keep that original box.
Well, I shouldn't say not the Craig route. Let's say you've got a game like I have with Descent. Descent has totally outgrown its original box.
Yeah, there's no way you can do it.
You've got a game, or it's like Battlelore, right? Or it's a miniature game that's sort of a board game, like a collectible one, like Monster Apocalypse, right? Or Arcane Legions, where it's really you got a lot of bits. There's not really a box that comes with it, or the box that comes with it is so flimsy you're not going to use it. Right. Then you're going to go to your hardware store or your craft stores. You're going to look at the smaller tool boxes or screw organizer kits.
Yep. Or bead organizing is awesome too.
Right. Any of those things are great places to go to find where you can just throw all your stuff from your one box in there. What I look for with those is generally, Rafe, to help you not break your brain on how is everything going to fit, I look at only the largest pieces I have and make sure they're going to fit in the box. So generally, the smaller pieces are okay. It's like Craig pointed out, the cards and the rule books and stuff, how are you going to get that in there?
Yeah.
Right.
And so if you can figure out a box that has like a couple of big bays in it and then a bunch of smaller bays, that's generally a good one to consider.
Yeah.
So that's where I go. And it depends how much I think I'm going to play the game, too, if I'm going to spend that kind of money on it or if I'm just going to throw it all in a big tub,
Right.
But generally, I don't like to.
This is fascinating to me because I don't think of anything. My view of a box is I do enjoy opening it and I do oogling it and I just pop everything out and let them flop all around in there or put them in a few Ziploc bags. Like all the cards I jam into a Ziploc bag.
Craig,
it takes forever to set up a game like that.
I'm still not convinced these plano boxes, other than the StarCraft method, is much faster.
Oh yeah. Try playing Civ. Try playing Civilization with my set and then someone else's set.
Oh, how about with a game share set?
Yeah, or a game share set.
That's where you realize how important box control is.
Right.
Because it's God knows who had the game out last.
Right.
And it's just all messed and mishmashed up there. It's like a library book, really.
But don't you think that or
a rented mule.
Not don't you think, but is it the same time? Because you still have to get from the game back into the plano boxes at the end of the game.
No, because you play from the plano box.
Quite often as you're playing, you can put stuff away.
Oh.
The plano box is the bank. So you take out and put back during the game, so there's not much cleanup.
I see.
Yeah. The plano boxes become part of the gaming playing experience. Right. They're not just you okay. Wow, that seeing eye dog is not behaving itself today.
What were you saying?
I was saying that the game box, the plano box is actually part of the experience. Like Russ says, it is the bank.
Right.
It is the storage during play. It's not like you bring it everything, dump it all out, set it all up, which is how many people play board games.
Right.
And you've got everything set up on the table in little stacks.
Well,
Once you've got correct box control, you don't need to do that anymore.
Right.
How much extra does this box control method, roughly cost?
Plano boxes are normally between $1 to $3 depending on the size.
Altogether. So you buy Civ, and what are you roughly thinking you're spending? Russ?
I probably spend $10 more on box control. Yeah. Typically, 10 to 20 depending on the game and how much.
Wow.
Is it. Yeah.
And Craig's rather frugal when it comes to
everything.
Like he said, the tape. He's like, but you definitely recommend it, right? So that $10 is well spent.
Oh, I think so.
Well, the tape's once a year thing. I mean, once you buy it,
and there is that psychological element. If you enjoy organizing things, then there's no better way to do that and enjoy that experience than Plano.
Right.
Except for
I meant the whole thing, whether it's the little Glad bowls or the baggies or whatever.
Well, I'm saying the same. Yeah, but that organizing all of these components is definitely got an element of kind of OCD enjoyment to it.
Huh.
Right.
Just seems like work to me. But I do hate setting up.
Which is odd because you like games that are about work.
I know.
Right.
But I don't like
you would rather
setup.
pretend to be a factory manager than actually organize your cool, fun toys. But
That is correct.
Right.
Okay.
That is absolutely correct.
I think we've missed one trick here as far as boxes
What's that?
inside the box goes.
Yeah.
And we can probably give Romeo a little plug here.
Yeah.
Because anybody, you don't have to be just a miniature player to go on Battle Foam. And if you have an idea in your head, first of all, he can cut the foam to any size. So you can actually literally have foam cut so that it fits the box your game came in.
Right.
And then you just custom make that tray or those trays, because multiple trays can go into those boxes, exactly like he did the Space Hulk inserts. And you can have your entire game set up there too. That is where it gets really
Now,
expensive.
have you tried that? Because I've never done that before.
Well, I have the Space Hulk.
Oh, you
one.
did? How did you like? Did it work out well for you?
It's awesome. It's beautiful.
Because I'm thinking about for Castle for Wrath and Ravenloft. I'm painting the miniatures now, and I want to get them back in the box. I think I could have custom foam made that holds the miniatures perfectly and just goes right in.
See, if you want to be like the Vatican assassin level, and you really want to go all out and be a winner,
Vatican assassin.
then that's the way you want to go. Definitely.
I might have to do this.
You open the box and it's like you're opening the box to your
Right.
sniper rifle.
It's like opening your miniature case. All of a sudden, it's like, ooh, you are serious about that board game, aren't you, dude?
All right, this is going to get insert laughter here, but the thing I find frustrating with the Plano box is I don't know what it is with my fingers or my dexterity, but I am constantly jamming my cuticles into the freaking Plano boxes.
I don't
it
have
drives
that
me
problem.
nuts.
That's very unusual.
I have two words for you.
Mhm.
Ginkgo biloba.
I know. And the second problem I have is because this happens with Descent. I do have them for Descent. The stupid little wall between them will creep up, and I will start to get intermingling, kind of like mashed potatoes and peas.
I have two words for you. Super glue.
Yeah, but it's so permanent.
But if you're using it
my
only for
God.
Descent, the things cost like $2 a box, dude. Just
No,
super
I
glue.
meant because I'm not sure that I have the ultimate layout.
But okay.
So, but you answered that for me. You said you don't worry about the ultimate layout. You just kind of make sure everything fits.
Yeah, if it fits in a place.
So-
I mean, I've been playing Descent now with the same setup for I don't know how long, so I'm pretty
Okay.
confident that I can glue it in and it's okay.
And you can also put a little piece of foam like the toppers.
Yep.
Cut a little topper so that it fits on there, and it'll actually hold everything down.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's
you don't-
not permanent, Rafe. You
Yeah.
could totally change that every time you open
totally
it.
do that. So, right. So that's, and I think we've already talked about some of this stuff here, so I'm not going to belabor it, but we really wanted to cover the idea that, you want to sort these things out when you're figuring out these boxes to have for particular players or particular pieces or particular roles in the game. So a Plano box
that
for
makes
the
a
bank,
lot of sense to me.
A Plano box for player one. Like what I did with one of them is, Civilization comes with this little side bank board thing that has all of the different buildings you can buy organized on it, right? And you really want to have your building piles on that board during play because there's all kinds of other information about it and it's all sorted together. So, and it's a pain every time you're setting up Civilization to sort out all those little squares. So what I did was I have a little Plano. It's a small one. It's whatever. It's a 3448. And it is exactly holds those squares exactly right. And it even can organize them in the same order. I just turn that upside down, lift it up, and they're all pre-sorted in piles, right?
Yeah,
And they're on the board. And then at the end of the game, you just take each pile, put them back on the Plano thing, boom, you're done. So that's an example where I pop it out and in, but it's a Plano dedicated to that one game role. And it makes setup and teardown very, very quick.
Yeah.
So I think that's really the most important part when you're thinking about it. Really think about not optimized storage, but optimized gameplay.
Right.
Otherwise, you're really just wasting money because you might as well just throw it all in bags at that point, I think.
Yeah. You can't have
Right.
if there's only two little tokens that say stun, you don't want a whole thing just for those two tokens.
Yep. And your options for cards, I think really the thing is when you're talking about cards, you want to talk about either tuck boxes. And what's a tuck box?
What's a tuck box?
Okay, well, tuck boxes basically, they're called this because they are generally something made out of very, very thin cardboard or even paper. If you go to Board Game Geek, every game, and pretty much any game on Board Game Geek, someone has made a tuck box up for this game.
Huh.
And all it is it's some nice artwork, and it prints it on your printer, and then you can fold it up into a little box that's the size of a card deck.
It's just like the boxes for Descent, the campaigns.
Yes, exactly. The ones that come in those, or if you've seen a playing card box for like bicycle cards that opens it, it's like one of those. And it'll hold your cards perfectly. You tuck the top in, it keeps it closed, and your cards will be safe and they won't bend or warp. And you can have a tuck box for each deck in the game so that they're all pre-sorted. So there's no like trying to find which deck's where, and all of a sudden, or your cards aren't falling all over the box. You don't organize them all. It takes care of that. And you don't have the problem with the rubber bands. And they're cheaper because you're making themselves than amazing tape. So I think the most affordable, best solution for your cards is the tuck box, but I find tuck boxes to be too much work, so I go to amazing tape. So that's what I use. But you pay for it for the convenience.
What size would you see? I'm kind of liking the battle foam concept because then it's all kind of pre-cut. It's soft for my cuticles, and the walls won't fall down.
Yeah, but that's also the most expensive option, too.
But it's the most expensive,
right?
But what would you recommend if someone like me who has no box control except for one Plano box with Descent and it's not very organized, would it be wells of 2x2 and a 1-inch foam? Splurge for the 2-inch foam because you can store more. Like, just what's your gut without measuring it out? And let's say I want a box control merchant.
1 inch.
Okay. I try to stay with 1-inch foam if you can, just because you get more layers.
Yeah, so although with merchants you may need. The ships can store on their sides.
Yeah. So I wouldn't.
And what would you just order? Like a bunch of 2x2 squares?
Well, I don't know. I would lay out everything on a table, and I would one thing at it. I would take like in exactly in the collections that you would want to store them together, and one at a time. I would try to figure out how much space is that going to take, how much space is that going to take. It's very hard to generalize that sort of thing.
It is. Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think. But again, I would not go to the battle foam route, I don't think, in this case, unless you have painted models. Because I don't think it's really worth the cost there, to be honest with you.
Okay.
But you could. I mean, you certainly could. It would look awesome. But I think for those cases, you could do the other things we've suggested here. But if you've got a game where you're painting, like I'm painting up Ravenloft, or if you're painting up the boats from Merchants and Marauders, you definitely want to keep those a little safer. And then you're investing so much time, you might as well invest the money to keep it safe.
Right.
So. All right, so we've talked a lot about how this already speeds up gameplay, but I think there's some other things to keep an eye on for speeding up gameplay. The most important thing is the bits should be easy to get to. They need to be divided for game roll. We've already talked about that. They need to be easy to find while you're playing, which again comes back to keeping them centrally located and easy to get to. Another thing I like, and this isn't really box control, but people ask me about this all the time because I talk about it on the show a lot. I've mentioned several times in our big D&D versus Descent debate there, this idea that I had this card holder thing. And what this is it's called a hold it. That's the word hold -it. If you Google hold it cards, you will find this thing. Your local gaming store can carry it if they want. It's not cheap. It's between...
I thought the company went out of business.
Oh, I think you can still get it. I know Dan still carries them at Myriad.
I believe he bought a bunch when he heard that.
Yes, I think Craig is right. Now whether...
Well, snap them up, people. This thing's awesome. So what it
Unless another manufacturer's picked them up, I don't know.
I don't know, but it's a, and maybe other people make these things too. I don't know, but what's cool about this is it's a plastic thing and there's a bunch of slots in it that are the width of a deck of cards, and so you can actually have multiple decks and it holds them vertically. So you can organize. It handles, I think, maybe like 15 different decks at a time. So what's great about this is you can have this thing up. It's very narrow. It doesn't take up a lot of table space, but it organizes all your 15 decks. So instead of having, and even if you only have a 6-deck game, you have that many discard pile decks. So when I play like Wrath of Ashardalon, I can have the deck plus the discard deck for the monsters, the deck for the treasures plus the discard deck for the treasures, all sitting right there, face up or facing the players. They can all see what's going on. They can all reach them, and it's not taking up half the table. And no one's knocking over decks of cards and sending cards flying everywhere.
You know what bugs me about that? I do own that as well. Mm-hmm. I like it. I'm pretty sure it doesn't fit into a standard box. It'll fit into a coffin box.
No, it doesn't fit into the square box. I know, it's really annoying.
And there's no lid. So now you're storing the stuff with either rubber bands or that amazing tape. Well, and then you're redeploying.
Mine does fit in my coffin box for Descent.
Well, it fits the coffin box.
Yeah, it'll fit the coffin.
It'll fit the square boxes, though.
But then even if you put it in Descent, there's no lid.
Yeah,
right. But if don't tip your box.
Yeah, well, I think
that's crazy.
A card aficionado would tell you not to store their cards on their ends anyway because they'll warp.
Right. Yes. So, and that is true. They do.
Yes. So you don't really want to. But what Rafe's suggesting is it would be cool. And I thought this too because I was this lazy with Descent. Also, I was playing weekly. I would have them. All my cards would be in the tray, and I would put the tray carefully in my Descent box, and I would just try to carry it vertically. And once in a while, I got knocked over as a pain. I had to sort of thing out again. But if it had a cool little like closing cover, a plastic hinge cover or something, that would keep them all in their slots. That would have been awesome. But again, someone, a hardcore card player would tell you that's awful because your cards are going to slowly warp.
Ooh, it would be good. Would be a tiered, like a 4-inch battle foam one that was tiered.
Ooh.
Just like hold it. Because then
and if it was double halved, you could lock them together and then store it sideways, and they'd be flat. And then you could slide them apart, and you'd have your cards ready to play. Ooh.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, so calling all manufacturers, we need that. Or maybe we'll see if Romeo can mock something up for us. But some kind of way to organize your cards so you can play them with them vertically really is helpful during a game.
Right.
And the hold it's fantastic. So hopefully you can find one if you really find it useful because it's awesome. So the moral of this part, though, I just wanted to say is it's not just about storage. Box control is also about making the gameplay faster. I think that's the big thing I wanted to say. Now, one thing I want to touch on before we get kicked out of Dunks here is the idea that box control isn't just about board games.
I would argue that it's infinitely more important than in board games.
It's very important for any kind of collectible game, like collectible plastics. It doesn't matter. It could be the Star Wars plastic figure game. It could be Hero Clicks. It could be all those games have tough box control. I mean, in fact, the worst part about collectible miniature games like Monster Apocalypse is the boxes literally just destroy themselves as you open the models.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no storage when you're done. So what are you going to do? So what do you guys do? I mean, obviously there's the high-end choices for the high-end miniature games where you're going to go to Battle Foam or a company like that and get a nice case and awesome foam. But what about when you first get the game? Or if it's a collectible game like Monster Apocalypse where you don't really need foam for it, what do you do? How do you approach that, Craig?
Well, they've got this thing at Target, and they're these they look like Tupperware, and they're cases that they're about the size of, they're like 8 inches long, 4 inches wide probably, and they have a little top that snaps on there, but they stack. So one snaps on top of another, snaps onto another also. And they are my absolute go-to for any collectible pre-paints. Because you're not worried about the paint scheme. So you're not really worried about the storage. I have one 4 high for my Star Wars miniature game models.
Oh, yeah.
And it's awesome because they also they have one that has compartments in it that actually lift out. So it's like an insert, and you can lift it out. It's 3 on each side, and each side comes out individually. And that's where I have all my special characters, and I have them broken down into episode 4, episode 5, episode 6, because those are the only real ones. And then I have all of my Imperial, and then I have all of my Rebel, and then I have all of my Fringe models. So literally, I mean, it's awesome for the Star Wars. And then I had 2 different sets for the Star Wars spaceship miniature game.
Now, what are these again? Because I've seen these.
They're usually in the storage section of Target.
Yep.
Okay, these are the ones that clip onto the one beneath it.
Yes, they stack up high, and they're not very deep. So for small miniature games, they're great. You can get I use it for Monster Apocalypse too. Some of the buildings are kind of pushing it on the edges when they're sideways, but.
Right, because there's also the deeper ones too.
Yes, there's deeper ones. Yep. So you can do that, and that's great for that because again, with the pre-paints, you're not really so concerned about things banging together, so you can kind of just throw them in a little bag, a box or bag together.
Right.
So I agree with you, Craig. I like those as well. There are also very affordable foam tray and cardboard options, right? I think Craig used to use a lot of those that you can do for just throwing stuff in there if it's a very simple miniature game or something you're just playing around with, or you're just in the early stages of testing a new miniature game and you haven't decided, if it's going to be a hit or not, and you don't want to, invest in a big bag if it's just going to be something you leave in your house. So that kind of stuff, you can go for, this like basically egg crate foam. I've done this before. I have little tiny boxes, and what I did, it was kind of fun, was and this is kind of neat, there's a candy company called Hebert's in New England.
Yes, yeah.
And they have this store, and they sell all kinds of candy. But what's kind of neat about them is they get shipments of themed candy all the time, and they get they come in these cool boxes, and then they sell the boxes for $1 empty.
Yeah.
And when the Lord of the Rings movies came out, they had a bunch of these really cool, nice cardboard, glossy boxes with Lord of the Rings movie artwork all over them with cool little hinges and everything, and they were $1. So I picked a bunch of these things, and they look great. And then I'm back when we used to play Lord of the Rings all the time. I put all my guys in there, just separated by a little bit of paper towels.
Yep.
And it was kind of a very sloppy miniature carrying case, but it was kind of cool because it carried my stuff around, and it was an easy way to do it. And it was kind of themed, and it only cost me $1. So there are very affordable ways to get your miniatures around until you decide, oh, and the Lord of the Rings never really grew big enough for me to ever really warrant having an actual bag for it. Right. But there's all kinds of ways to get your stuff around. But the big problem with miniature games is you not only have to carry the models, you got to carry the rules and any tape measures and any gizmos. How do you handle all that, Craig?
Well, I've got a bunch of different ways. Firstly, we're not talking. For Christmas, Karen got me a Star Wars lunchbox.
Ooh, nice.
So for a while, I was carrying all of that stuff in a Star Wars lunchbox for Dystopian Wars.
See, it's all about themed bling.
It is. It is exactly all about.
I just thought of an idea.
But as far as like I'm usually carrying around a metric ton of terrain also. So I have a large cardboard or Tupperware box for that.
Right.
So that's usually what I do, where I put the box, the rule books and things like that. Yeah.
Ah, cool.
Well, that reminds me. I use my. I don't think of this as box control, but it's a fun way to use those little freebies that you get from the games. Because I bought Fallout 3, and it came with a lunchbox and a bobblehead.
Right. Yep.
Yeah.
And so I carry around my Warhammer Invasion cards
in a bobblehead.
Yes, it's
awesome.
Really cool bobblehead.
Like in its mouth.
Well, I'm reading that book from Audible. Russ, I got it. That Physics of the Impossible.
Isn't it good?
Yeah, so Craig, the bobblehead's head is really interdimensional. It's kind of like a
very
holding.
nice.
And so I put all my cards inside the bobblehead.
Touche.
Well done.
Yeah.
So any other box control thoughts?
It just fascinates me that you guys get some hobby enjoyment out of it, but I am now intrigued to check it out because I do hate setup.
I think we need to have a contest. I think we need to do is, not for the listeners, but I mean, you and I, Raef, we need to each get a group of 4 players to play a board game, and one of us should go in with like a game share copy with just everything blown out everywhere, and one of us should go with like one of my box controlled versions, and we'll see which one plays faster.
Ah.
Yeah, including pack-up time, though, too.
Yes, setup and pack-up should be part of it. I agree.
Yep.
Yeah, because you're right. The game share pack-up is much faster. You just hold the lineage of the table and shovel it all in.
Right.
Don't tell Dan we said that. That's not what we do. That's not us. That's other people.
That's why we complain.
Right. We would never actually do that ourselves.
No, in fact, we haven't.
No, we would not. No, never.
No. I love. I'm telling you, it really does scratch an OCD itch.
It is weird. It is. I enjoy it too. It's kind of strange
because I love literally. I will sometimes just open my Battles of Westeros box just to look at it because I have never done box control. I have never done a box control better than the Battles of Westeros.
You know what it's like, Raef? You know, after you paint a model, it comes out really great. And once in a while, you just come back and it's still sitting there and you just look at it for a few minutes.
Go, I put it up on my bedside table.
That came out great. That's the same with box control for me.
Really?
Like
it's that enjoyable?
I organize Merchants and Marauders, right? And I put it all away and I close the lid. And I was going to work the next morning and I walked by the closed box. I'm like, I just peeked open and said, "Oh, that came out great."
Yeah.
No way.
Okay.
All right, I got to try this.
It's a little sad.
I'm telling you, man. It's just the satisfaction of a job well done.
It is.
It really
is. It totally is.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's box control, folks. Well.
Thanks for purchasing a D6G Lost chapter. Supporting the show helps it grow.
Tonight. Giving it all tonight. Oh, tonight. Giving it all tonight. Dun, dun. Little blast from the 80s.
There you go, baby.